I would like to call our first speaker, Christopher Sandberg, the Chief Creative Officer and founder of Company P. He's one of the most respected transmedia creators. He's dedicated to the exploration of drama with massive audience involvement. He won many awards. One of them is The Truth About Marika. And Marika or Marika? How do you say? Marika. Marika. And I have to say also that he is the one that made me a transmedia storytelling advocate. This is a thanks to Christopher. He will present some trends of cross-media, transmedia, social media, and he will talk about tendency and creations for a young audience in the digital age. Christopher Sandberg.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Let's hope that transmedia works on my computer. It seems to be working. Okie dokie. Yes. Okay, good morning. It's not a whiskey voice. It's I have a bit of a cold, but I hope you can understand me anyway. Let's start. I have about half an hour, is that correct? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the definitions of transmedia and how we think about it at the Company P. And I'm going to show some case studies so you can understand how we work. I'm starting with a little reel where you can see our stuff. The company has done mostly original projects, but also worked with Joss Whedon, for instance, who did Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We worked on his show Dollhouse, and we worked with Endgame, which is a Canadian show, to sort of sprinkle some sort of transmedia dust on it. But the things that really work is when it's built for audience participation from day one, which is what I'm going to try to talk about. We all know that the media industry has changed a lot over the last maybe 5-10 years, dramatically. And it feels like it's completely different in many ways. What has happened is that the audience has stepped into the experience, and they are no longer just watching what you do, they also feed into it with their opinions and with their actions and so on. And if you take care of that, that's how the show can spread, or the film, or whatever cinematic project you do, can spread outside the screen and into the lives of the people who are engaged in it. This is what participation typically looks like. One young person engaging in some sort of activity, and then the rest of us standing around watching. Of course, this means that it's mediated so that people at home can see it. But it's really just one person here who gets it, whatever the message is. And it's my firm belief that if you create a show or a film that lets basically everybody kick in the doors, that's going to be much more interesting for everybody. It's really transmedia or cross-media, whatever you want to call it. I had a little snippet here that I took away because I thought it was a bit too windy, but the word transmedia is, of course, the latest in a string of buzzwords about what this whole industry is doing. It could be called digital media, new media, but all these things sort of tend to not really mean anything after a while. Of course, it can't be new forever. But let's call it transmedia for the purpose of this presentation. Transmedia is really about how the experience transforms as it goes from one distribution channel to another. It's not about the technology itself, it's more about the experience and what you get out of it. And I see it as meaning arising from being in the story rather than just consuming it. Typically, you watch a show. If this is the forbidden fruit of a story, you typically watch it, and so you're a consumer of some sort of completed arts project. Maybe if you're lucky, you can bite into it and get a little taste of what it really means, like voting on Idol or something like that. And sometimes people really let you sort of get the meat of the fruit and collaborate and have deep engagement. Sometimes they even let you co-create with you. And it's called user-generated content, which is kind of a diminutive term, but do you let the audience feed into your experience? The important part here is that the value of this of your story changes from what kind of level of engagement you have. Speaking of which, is it possible to get a little more light on the audience? Because I'm talking to a dark wall. So I don't know if you're making odd faces or liking what I'm saying. But I'm going to try to... perfect. I see a little bit more now. Okay, so when there's a dialogue, things get more interesting. And the really transformative experience for the member of the audience is when they participate and do something. So it's kind of like when you go to the gym or something. You do it not necessarily because it's fun at the time, but you're going to change and look beautiful and be healthy. And sometimes that's what happens with a story. It's horrible or tragic or dramatic, but when you get out of it, you're going to have changed and transformed as a person. And as a marketing, if you work with marketing, you know that the transformative experience is the one that you remember. It's one that you keep with you for a longer time and you become an advocate for. So the value and the meaning that you derive from an experience grows, and the more you can engage. The more you put in, the more you get out, basically. And this meaning, what type of meaning you take out from a project, it's very different depending on what it is. So, for instance, in film or linear cinematics, there's one story that everybody watches, and you identify with it in some way, and that's going to define what kind of meaning you take away from the film or whatever it is. If you look at a game, for instance, it's not a narrative that is linear. It's a narrative that moves depending on your actions, and it becomes an individual story. And what defines it and what gives it meaning to you is the actions that you perform. So your experience is going to be different than another one's. Again, if it's a massively multiplayer game with a lot of people, it's not a single-player experience, it's something else. And then this whole sort of group of people acting within the game world start to tell a shared story. And sometimes it's a bit confusing because the story of running around in World of Warcraft and killing monsters is not necessarily the meaning that people take out of it. It could be the group identity, the guilds, the groups that they set up to, or you, if you play these kind of games, set up to play in massive multi-user worlds. That group identity becomes sometimes more important than the story world itself. And in these games, people talk about their normal life. They talk about boyfriends, girlfriends, and so on. More than they necessarily talk about magical swords and so on. And in social media, then the story isn't necessarily linear and single or anything like that. It's something else. And I look at it as an emergent story. For instance, if you follow the latest flurry of the film about one of the guerrilla leaders in Africa, it's sort of spreading and becoming a shared story where people add opinions and so on. And maybe around elections, people change their profile picture to have a party logo on it and something like that. And so people react, and it sort of starts to create stories within this social arena. And the meaning you take out of it is an affirmation. Someone likes your photo, or someone likes your status update or something like that, and that makes you feel that you're seen. Oh, perfect. Thank you. You feel that you're being watched and that people care about you. And, that gives you a meaning in your life. A mobile experience, this is, of course, terribly oversimplified, but if you take a mobile story of some sort, one of the key components of it is that it's locative, meaning it's moving around in space. And it has a sense of physicality more than anything else. I mean, sitting in a TV sofa or a cinema, of course, there is, the share can be different and so on. But if you move around with your cell phone, the physicality becomes so much more complex. And I would argue that the sense of presence is what makes a mobile experience really interesting. It can also be just a game in your pocket, but if it's truly sort of taking into account the physicality of the world, then this sense of presence can be very valuable. And I'm going to show you some examples on how you can use that in film-like storytelling using the environment. And Transmedia aspires to take all this into one experience. So it sort of uses all these aspects. You identify with the protagonist, you can create an emergent story together, and everything, you know, comes together to create the story world with everybody else involved. And I think that the value from it is a sense of ownership. And I think that's what you have to take away when you're creating your content or you're creating the campaign around the content, that the importance of new media or digital media or cross media or whatever you want to call it is that it allows you to interact and to add and take away, which means that you're a part owner of the experience. You're a part creator, you have a sense of ownership. And it's not that you click on a button and something happens. You know, if you have a bit of chewing gum on your finger and you press on a book, it's going to turn the page. And that's not, you know, magic. And the same thing with the buttons on a computer. It's not that it changes the screen, it's that you change while doing it. And that's what you need to think about. How can the audience change from your experience, from your story, and how can they change your story in turn? So typically we have the idea of content. And that is how you tell a story. But with new media and transmedia, you can tell and spread the story through the actions of the audience. And that becomes equally important, to many degrees, you know, in many cases even more important than the content you produce. Also because, of course, the audience are millions of people and you're just a little production team. So what they do can quickly overwhelm whatever you can produce. So let's look at friendship, for instance, as a concept. In content, it would look like something like this. So this content sort of tells the story of two people who care about each other. The same kind of message or story can be told in actions, and then it would look something like this. And of course, asking the audience to hug someone, asking you guys to hug someone right now, is kind of challenging and scary. And I've done projects where we asked people to take off their shoes or something like that. And these are things you do every day, but still if you're asked to do it within a story experience, it becomes kind of dramatic and scary. But on the other hand, that getting over that threshold and starting to interact and participate opens you up and everything becomes really much more intense for you afterwards. So doing something in a story world might be scary and has a threshold, but after that, people are willing to do so much and they're getting so much out of it. Typically, you rate your show with eyeballs, or your film, how many goes to the cinema. But nowadays, we have to think about fingertips also. What do they write? What do they tweet? You know, what do they click on with their mouse? And of course, just knowing that someone watches something doesn't tell you so much. You know, okay, they were there, they watched it. But when they start clicking away, you can see if they were happy or sad, if they had a bad or good day, if they're going to tell a friend. All these things happen. And if you follow that, it's going to be kind of like in the Matrix. You have to watch all this stuff sort of floating down the screen, and you're sort of, okay, there's something going on there and something going on there. If you do that, if you read the logs constantly, you're going to know so much more what's going on with your project and how to tweak it to sell it. And then we have footsteps. People are going to walk around. They're not sitting down anymore. We always walked around as a species, but now as a storyteller, you can follow them with a cell phone or iPad or whatever technology you're using, and you know, a Foursquare check-in or something where you see, oh, they were there or they were doing that. And all these things together is what's going to determine your marketing sort of result. The fun thing for me as a storyteller is that the marketing and the storytelling are you know, basically the same thing. People do actions that makes them feel the story, but these actions also spreads the story to other people. So other people can watch it, other people can think about it or talk about it and take it out to the streets. Here are some examples of tools we used for one of our projects, social media tools. And it's about spreading text and video and uploading automatically from your cell phone and so on. video conferencing and other more special technologies. For instance, Nokia's Point and Find, where you can point your phone and see a video on location. If you point it at a statue, something will start playing on the screen. Anyway, this is just to tell you that, of course, there's a plethora of things you can use out there. And it's a bit confusing, and you get a bit desperate, and you think, okay, how are my kids going to tweet about my show or whatever? And the important part here is that think about what the position of the audience is for your show, for the characters of your show, for instance. How are your audience important to them? And then you build a social media strategy around that. So don't just try to cram everything into your project just because someone told you have to. An example that we think about is that we start with some sort of PR, maybe. It could be an alternate reality game, which is basically just a fancy word for a mystery using new media. So it could be fictional web pages and things hidden in a phone booth somewhere or something. Anyway, these kind of guerrilla marketing tools lead you to the next sort of thing in your campaign. For us, it's typically a web page, because that's where we can register people, we can give them an explanation of what's going on, and maybe the slightly mysterious PR campaign can be explained away there, a little bit there. And then we maybe take them to a video blog where they can have a dialogue with the characters, or we take them to a game online. You can, of course, bring that game to your cell phone and take it out to the streets where we can create events with them. And all these things then feed into the drama. If it's a feature or a TV, it doesn't really matter, or a web series. But we collect all these things, which is what I'm going to show in one of the projects. How much am I for time now? Yes. Just so I know. Okay, so of course, to make this happen, you have to build a big ecosystem of technology, like online websites or mobile technologies like games and apps to convey your story. And all this stuff, as I said in the beginning, can be quite overwhelming. How do you build all this? And the general wisdom is that if you build all this and you put up a web page, people go to it and you're going to be happy. But really, that's not the case. It's like putting up a coffee shop somewhere in the forest. Not necessarily anybody is going to visit. My idea is that if you let people build it with you, they will come. I will blast through one example, a case study, and then go to the other case study. But here is a project, just for your inspiration, that we did with a lot of young people all over the world that would not have been possible without them building it with us. So our idea was to make a dragon story, and we wanted to. This is the model of the village we wanted to build, and here's the actual dragon that we built with a lab. Robotics lab in Finland. And here are the houses that we started to build with the audience. And here they move in the dragon village. And they live and eat and perform dragon dances and so on. And in this temple here, it's a bit dark, but in the middle of the screen there is a tower in the temple, and we had cameras there filming, and we created hours and hours and hours of content of people congregating, dancing with the dragon, and so on. And it was people from 22 countries that came together to live as dragon farmers for a week. And this, of course, would have been impossible without them helping us build the village and so on, and sew their own costumes and all that. So at the end of my speech here, which has given you, I hope, some sort of inspirational definitions of how we look at transmedia, I'm going to show you a project called Conspiracy for Good, which is a truly sort of original transmedia project we did with Tim Kring, the creator of Heroes.
It all started with a 3-month-long alternate reality game that included website discoveries, puzzles, tweets, and text messages, all enhanced by 3 mobile games created specifically to advance the story. And on July the 17th, the story burst from the web and onto the streets of London, culminating in 4 weeks of real-world gameplay and live theatre that would forever change the definition of audience participation.
Get out of my face, move.
And this is the story they told.
Why are you running? Are you a member?
Rows and rows of silent stones in the cemetery. They don't need your time, just your testimony.
In 2010, recording artist Nadira X puts her career on hold to teach school in Zambia, where she plans to build a new library for her students.
I always spoke from the heart, set hypocrisy apart.
However, the library is never built. The books, shipped from London, mysteriously go missing.
We have very firm ideas who's behind this.
The main suspect is multinational corporation Blackwell Briggs, who plans to build an oil pipeline directly through the village.
Can I get 5 minutes of his time?
Nadira turns to her friend, David Nasofu, a local employee of the British company. He promises her and the school kids that he'll go to headquarters to save the library. But all that remains of his ill-fated London visit is a series of videos of him running for his life through the streets. And then, he disappeared. Where did he go? And what did he know?
But let me tell you about the project and how we made it work with marketing and storytelling. We started with this image of Africa, of specifically Zambia and the Petauke region, which is incredibly poor, and of the kids in Chataika village, about 400 kids, not all of them able to go to school. And the idea of greed and how that sort of destroys the world. The first thing we did was to produce a documentary about the problems in Africa, or specifically in Chataika. And I'm not going to show this much, but I'm going to jump to one segment of it. You can bring the sound of the film up again.
Village. There are 2,000 people living here, and this come into our aid.
Here we have the filmmaker standing at the site of the library.
The site of the prospective library here in Chataika. The teachers are very hopeful that this will get built. They're still struggling to get money, but as you can see, the foundations are there, and hopefully it will happen soon. They realize how important knowledge is in the development of this community. But you must remember, this community has a lot of adversity. They have very high levels of AIDS, real nutrition problems, and there's even rumors that I've been speaking to some villagers about a corporation apparently wanting to build here potentially a pipeline through, which would absolutely devastate this community.
So the first part of that speech is true. We want to build a library, and it is a part of the world with a lot of issues. The second part there of an oil pipeline is fictional, something we created to raise people's interest of this situation. And then through a graphical novel and online mysteries, we sort of spread this story, which led to music, and in that music you could find clues that eventually led to the evil corporation Blackwell Briggs. And following these clues, you could see a video that we leaked on Pirate Bay. So the Blackwell Briggs Corporation is doing a lobbying piece to the British government, and we leaked that on Pirate Bay. It's a film that pretty much outlines how big and dangerous the villain of our story is. How they are,
Briggs.
Operating all over the world, and how they want the government to give them control over all the CCTV cameras in Britain.
Government's responsibility to ask for assistance from its people in times of need. Blackwell and Briggs stand ready to answer such a call. We urge you to pass the Security Act on public surveillance and private law enforcement. The choice is yours. You have the power, the right, the obligation to make a difference. We are one nation, one people, and we ask that you give our one world a chance. Our world. Your choice.
needless to say, Blackwell Briggs is a huge enemy. And our fans then spreads their own campaign, telling the real story behind it, and urging people to record the denial of being part of this secret society against Blackwell Briggs.
Fight going on out there. And if anyone from this club of greed wants to know which side you're on, then tell them this. I am not a member.
And this "I'm not a member" statement became a sort of viral fire, spreading with big actors and other people supporting the story, the campaign, by claiming that they were not members, like Ringo Starr and J.J. Abrams and actors from Hollywood and so on, and people all over the world. And this was our viral marketing campaign to lead up to the story, and to lead to the hero and her fight against Blackwell Briggs. And we spread the story with, you know, guerrilla things like paper planes with messages and so on. And all this leading the people to London, where they could go through the cityscape to use the phone to find videos in the city and basically be part of the story, getting chased by Blackwell Briggs operatives and so on, and eventually confronting them at their own press conference, taking them down, and revealing the evil fact that the corporation's CEO, Sir Ian Briggs, actually very physically retired one of his employees, Mr. David Nsofo, who tried to stop this whole thing. And at the end, we put all these things together into the episodes that we aired. So the actions of the audience, the viral marketing and everything became the content of our show. And I'm going to stop now with just one slide that showed the effect of this in the end, which was, of course, striving to make real change in the world. So thank you. This is all I have time for right now. Thank you.